How you doing, guys? This is Eric from rulthewasteland.com. I've talked before about how I definitely think inflation is the way that the economy is going to continue to deteriorate, not deflation. And strictly speaking, like you guys probably know, I mean, that's already literally the case. Inflation, by definition, is an increase in the supply of money and credit, period. That is inflation. Now, it doesn't always directly cause price increases, at least not right away. That's what people usually mean when they say inflation. They're talking about prices going up. But strictly speaking, the inflation is the increase in the supply of money and credit. It doesn't always necessarily affect prices immediately, certain sectors, whatever. I mean, if you were to you could make an infinite amount of money, and if you just buried it in a hole in the ground, then it still exists, it's still out there. Or if you gave it to one entity and it sits on it, there's no money velocity, that money's not going through the system, whatever. So the price increases that we normally expect to see from inflation don't happen. But and that's kind of why in the past it's only been modest, even though they have been creating a lot of money. I mean, the dollar's lost a massive amount of its purchasing power since the creation of the Federal Reserve and the Federal Reserve note. But most of the time, this has been a financial institution thing, a central banking thing. That money hasn't really made its way into the normal person economy quite as much as it has started to recently with things like stimulus benefits, the Fed getting more direct with their asset purchasing, things like that. And that's only going to increase. And this particular topic that I want to cover today is exactly why I know it's going to happen, and probably fairly soon, and is obviously going to be, in my opinion, irreversible. The article that I'm going to cover today, you've probably seen mentioned in a few videos or whatever on the side of the internet, but it is food stamp benefits being increased by more than 25%. That is the largest single increase in the program's history. This goes back to what I mentioned a few videos ago, like you can't undo these things, regardless of how depressive the market forces are in terms of slowing down the economy. Inflation is, like I just mentioned, fundamentally a currency issue. It's a money issue. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what's going on in the economy. You could have, I mean, obviously they're linked, especially in the way that our currency is kind of created, and people point to that, say that because it has a debt attached to it, and there's always more debt than currency, that you can get into a situation theoretically where there could be a spiral, a collapse. And this is covered, I believe, in Chris Martinson's Crash Course, the original version. I definitely suggest you look into that, where the you could theoretically have a collapsing, like, debt implosion, I guess, where if something's paid off, the money literally disappears. But this kind of thing that I'm covering with the food stamps and everything else shows why that's not going to happen, because the currency creation can be done independently from what's going on in the economy. The economy could be doing well, poorly, whatever, and you could still theoretically create an infinite amount of money if you have that control, like our government does. And so when people like Harry Dent come out and say, like, oh, they would just have to create so much money, I'm like, yeah, they will. They will create an infinite amount of money if they need to prevent the money disappearing. And because this is why, let me tell you, food stamps, benefits, paying people like military, police, politicians. If we had that implosion that you would see in a real kind of depressive collapse that literally erased dollars, they wouldn't be able to do this. They wouldn't be able to pay even normal food benefits, welfare, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, military and police paychecks, politicians' paychecks, and they're increasing them. And you can't undo these things. These are not something you can undo. Do you think you could ever go back? Now, it does say in this article that these increases are permanent, but do you really think that even if they said they were temporary, just to make it seem better, which interestingly enough is kind of in the article, but do you ever think, because this was originally a 15% pandemic increase that has now become a permanent 25% increase, which kind of proves my point. It is impossible to undo this without this massive cultural and societal implosion. If you try to, like, if we had a debt kind of dollar implosion where a typical, what we'd consider a depression, where things actually got cheaper, wages went down, all this stuff, this money would be disappearing. and we already are running deficits, where the government isn't technically taking in enough money, not even close, to pay for what it's paying for. It's creating that money every year out of thin air, that they wouldn't be able to pay for these things. And do you think our society, our country, our culture, any of it, do you think civilization could even be maintained, running water, electricity, if they stopped paying all these things? If they were to stop paying food stamps, welfare, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, even not even necessarily completely, but if they were to even do a massive reduction or stop it completely, our country would be like a bad day in Bosnia in a matter of days, if not or weeks, if not days. And that absolutely they will not let that happen. It just is never in a million years ever going to happen. Which is why I'm 100% convinced that the only way out of this, which isn't an escape, but the only outcome of this is a significant inflation. Now, I don't know, and I don't really care to speculate if that's going to end in what we would consider legitimate hyperinflation or just really, really bad inflation, because it doesn't change, in my opinion, how you prepare for it. It only affects how bad it's going to get in a certain sense. But whether we get 10% inflation, 15%, 20% inflation, or 5, 10,000% inflation, it doesn't really matter. You still just want to get out of dollars, things like that. So, but let me just read this article really quick. So the food stamp benefits increased by more than 25%, the largest single increase in the program's history. Sorry, I'm shaking the desk here. President Joe Biden's administration has approved a significant and permanent increase. Like I said, there is no such thing as a temporary increase in benefits, because they can't deal with the shitstorm that will happen if they try to take it away. A significant and permanent increase in the levels of food aid available to needy families, the largest single increase in the program's history. Starting in October, average benefits for food stamps, officially known as a Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, will rise more than 25% above pre-pandemic levels. The increased assistance will be indefinitely available to all, get ready, 42 million SNAP beneficiaries. That's another reason why this is so widespread, so much more widespread than some of you may think if you're not on, these programs, or you don't involved with them directly or anything like that, or haven't researched it. There is a massive amount of people on these benefits. Now, that 42 million beneficiaries, that's probably households. So each beneficiary is going to be like a parent, maybe a spouse, like there will be multiple people affected by that. So even if we're just looking at direct numbers, there's only 42 million individuals on food stamps. That's insanely high. There's 330 million people, roughly speaking, in the United States. Even if only 42 million were on food stamps, you can see why they can't undo that. And if that represents households, which it almost certainly does, if you're including children or whatnot, you're talking about 100 million people, maybe more, that are to some extent dependent on these benefits. And you think that you can the government can deal with all of a sudden the amount of money they have just being less in a typical kind of historical deflationary type environment? Never gonna happen in a million years. I was gonna say I would bet everything I own on it, but I kind of am betting everything I own on it in the way that I'm investing my assets. And you can do what you want. I'm not a financial advisor, but bet against the debt would be my advice if I were. And yeah, all you can really do at this point is get out of the dollar and wait and see how bad it's going to be. Let me know what you guys think. If there are any of you who still think that there is going to be some kind of deflation, and I'm talking specifically speaking, like I said, with the currency situation, because there obviously are deflationary or depressive, let's put it that way, because deflation would be the opposite of inflation, depressionary market forces in the economy. But like I said, that is an economy issue. That is not a currency issue. The economy could be doing whatever it wants. The decision or action to control the amount of currency can be done independently of that. Obviously, they're to some extent linked, but there's no necessarily any reason that they have to be. An entity that has power to control the amount of currency can enact that power regardless of what's going on in the economy. So when what's going on in the economy starts to take away from the power that they use to control the people, to appease the people, do you really think they're just going to just let that rope slip through their hands? Like, whoops, we lost it. We can't pay our security. We can't pay the tens of millions of people on food stamps, or the tens of millions of more people on Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid, and just deal with the absolute hellhole that would instantly result. No, they're going to create an insane amount of money, literally as much as needed, and force it into the economy in any way that they can or want to. And I've literally had Federal Reserve chairmen saying that they'd be willing to drop it out of helicopters. So I don't know why this is even a debated point, but it somehow still is. But let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching. Check out rulethewasteland.com. Make sure you pick yourself up some silver. I got this from MK Bars. I made some videos on it back in the day. This is by far my favorite piece of silver. I prefer poured pirate silver to begin with, and this one just speaks to my soul. Nice big skull. Got the ripples from the poured silver. Just looks like it's still molten. This is a 0.33 out of 500. 15-ounce round. It'll pain me when I have to sell this one day. But you know, silver gets up to $5,000 an ounce or something. Won't be that painful. Talk to you guys later.